Thanks for coming to our webinar here on unlocking the $60 billion opportunity here in the North American oil and gas sector. So before we jump into the details here, just introduce our speakers, starting with myself, Jordan Saib, Chief Revenue Officer here at EasyOps. I've been doing this at EasyOps for over 4 years now, mostly helping E&Ps and facilities, disposal service companies, all of it kind of implement and improve their operations through technology. And before that, I was a well site geologist, so I saw firsthand the struggles and the inefficiencies of at least the drilling and completion side of the field operations. Ruchi?
Thank you, Jordan. My name is Ruchita Rosario, and I'm the lead data scientist at EasyOps. I've been working in the oil and gas data science domain for about 3 years now, but I have experience with data science for about 5 to 6 years. I have a master's in big data, and that helps me get a good blend of the professional technologies that I've learned around data science and how we can bring that to the oil and gas space. Over to you, Charles.
Great, thanks, Richie. Yeah, Charles Edmonds here. I bring a wealth of knowledge in the enterprise software space, primarily business process management, working with oil and gas, large organizations, smaller organizations, ensuring that the value from a business standpoint meets the priority objectives of the senior leadership and in terms of strategy and approach. And I've been doing that for 20 plus years.
Perfect. Thanks, Charles. So jumping back to the thesis of the webinar here, addressing the $60 billion, actually over $60 billion market gap in the oil and gas industry here in North America. So as the sentence says there, between preventable production issues, excess expenditures or OPEX expenditures, and compliance and safety related problems, there is a $60 billion chunk of unrealized revenue in the North American oil and gas sector. And we're going to dive into the underlying numbers, how we got to that, and some of the complexities therein in Ruchi's section. But first, I want to jump into some of the hurdles that producers are facing, both from the head office and the field perspective. So to set it up, we've been working with over 20 oil and gas producers here in Western Canada. We have a plethora of case studies. We have all of the background data. We have our comprehensive data analysis done in-house, largely by Ruchi and her team, as well as anecdotal evidence, obviously collected from our numerous conversations with our POCs. And we've kind of broken it into these 2 stages of implementation. And we've called it today's and tomorrow's challenges. So today's challenge is just equipping your field teams and operations teams in general with the necessary tools to be successful. Many companies are still using pen and paper or Excel or maybe some technology, or usually a combination of all of them. Where we want to talk about today is getting everyone using efficient, effective technology. And then tomorrow's challenge is what we call, full production optimization or being perfectly optimized, which is still a number of years out. And that's why it's tomorrow's challenge, but we'll also dive into that aspect of it. Something I wanted to highlight especially is there's often a disconnect, and we all are very aware of this, between the head office objectives and what the field is trying to do in the field to execute. So I wanted to highlight some of the things here, especially the ones that I've heard anecdotally at least, and some supported by the data of the biggest issues currently in the field. The brain drain that's happened in the field over the last 5 or so years has been a big issue. A lot of inexperienced workers joining the oil patch, especially on the operations side, that are controlling a significant amount of assets because companies are trying to run leaner, do more with less. So as you see the numbers there, about $8.5 million per year per operator is the assets they're controlling. And when you have, less than a couple of years of experience, that is a daunting task. And there's a lot of data. A lot of companies use SCADA or some kind of IoT devices, or taking in data from so many sources. They're making their operators chase so many data points. There's no way for a human brain to synthesize and gather that data and make effective decisions out of it. So that's where we want to go with our technology. And that's what I want to talk about briefly here before we jump into Ruchi's section. The wide data capture, along with proprietary insights for unmatched efficiency and effectiveness. this is what companies like us and others in the industry are investing a ton of money into, creating a platform to capture that data, but also leverage the vast amount of historical data both us and our producers have to give your field operators and your office folks a better access and insight to make better decisions, basically augmenting their decision-making process. You still are going to have humans involved in the process. You want to augment them with technology to the maximum efficiency and effectiveness. So that is what we're going to highlight in this next section here. And I'm going to hand it off to Ruchi to dive into the details.
Thank you, Jordan. I would like to briefly talk about the impossible situation the frontline staff is in and what data-driven operations can do and what we mean when we say optimization. Over to the next slide, Jordan. Thank you. What is our why? What is our challenge? What is our mission? An operator has hundreds of tasks or events, as we call it, to take care of when they are on the field to ensure that they leave the field in a healthy condition. Now, keep in mind that some of these tasks are already scheduled events on each of the equipment on the field, and some of them are ad hoc tasks that come up while operating in a real world situation. Some of the examples, just to give an idea of what these tasks can entail, are ensuring the right pumps and tanks rate are set and they are functioning correctly. Just because you need to be in that right range, because if you under inject, then you have the risk of the pipeline freezing off, and if you over inject, then you are incurring more monetary loss. Or even ensuring that all the inspections are done timely on these heavy equipment to ensure the health and safety of the field, or addressing all the ad hoc tasks that come in, or sending a pig on schedule, making sure that the pipeline is not clogged, or even packaging these locations to minimize travel time. These are the different things that an operator actually has to take care of on his day-to-day. Moreover, looking at production issues that can directly hinder the production of a commodity, like a plunger malfunction or the pressure on these line pressure on these valves are not right. These are some of the more important issues that can take precedence over all of your other tasks. And operators constantly face the challenges of juggling these thousands of variables, along with making sure that all of the right external data is overlaid as well. As most of us are aware, most of these oil and gas operations are generally in remote locations. They face extreme weather conditions and they have to make some changes to their day-to-day operation when the weather is really extreme. What happens when I urgently need a mechanic or an E&I guy? How do I make sure that the contractor is available when I need them? Packaging all of these hundreds of variables in a day at the start of my day and ensuring that I can actually change that list as the situation changes by every passing minute is a real challenge. And as Jordan mentioned, if I am a green operator who doesn't have more than a couple of years of operating experience, then we are actually leaving them in such a difficult situation. It's completely guesswork on what the right next step is. Going to the next slide. So our objective is to completely eliminate that guesswork. The whole problem can actually be classified into two phases. First, we need a sophisticated system to record all the data and statuses of these tasks. So this is what we call digitizing of the data. Our application actually tries to capture the full picture of the field by recording all the scheduled events and giving them an option to record even the ad hoc ones. Here, what we're doing is taking the onus completely off of the operator to do the information management. From this point on, we can actually take the operator's intuition and experience into account and supplement them with the right information they need. Going on to the next slide. But how can we harness technology to take this to the next level? And there comes in phase two. This is what we call the optimization phase, using machine learning to actually generate a palatable and sequential list to take the guesswork completely out of the equation. as Jordan mentioned, we actually spoke to multiple industry experts and operators from multiple clients that run both small and big operations to understand the priorities between different events that an operator has to face every day. And these numbers, and then we assigned a priority score to each of these events. This score would actually change as a function of time, because if a pig is scheduled today and is delayed by 2 days, the priority of that pig should be increased accordingly, depending on the number of days it has been delayed and what kind of event it is. So all of this calculation is what goes into our system. And then we overlay some external data on top of it, like temperature, to manipulate the priorities of these tasks. This is what we call heuristic modeling in the data science world. That is one component of it. And another component of it is predictive analytics, which is basically predicting when there is going to be production issues. We saw that when there is prediction in the picture, we can actually predict issues minutes to hours before an operator could actually get their eyes on the graphs or SCADA data and understand that there is something wrong with the system. Now, when you are keeping the well running for those extra minutes or those hours sometimes, that is the additional monetary benefit that is happening through the optimization. I would like to show a quick snapshot of how our optimization currently looks like. On the left, here you actually see a graph of a remote location, and the pink line is the route that we have recommended the operator to take. The yellow bubble is the number of events that they have to do at every location. So on the right here, you can see that they are expected to visit 9 locations and a total of 10 hours of workday, where they are spending 5 hours on the field and around 5 hours drive time. So we have actually broken down this list, and we give them an easy list. And on the background, the optimization is doing the hard work of sequencing and arranging the items and events according to what the most important thing is, to make sure that the production is up and running while making sure that the operational expenditure is low as possible. Going on to the next slide. Thank you. So to recap, EasyOps crafts the perfect days for operators using data-driven technologies. The operators then actually have the opportunity to adjust these plans according to the most up-to-date data in the field. And then our model is constantly learning and taking and learning from these data points to get one step closer to our ultimate goal of reaching 100% efficiency. All right, going on to the next slide. So after we implemented the model, the next natural step for us was to conduct studies and understand the amount of savings that the clients that have adopted this optimization have seen, and what are the gaps that were actually met after they adopted this way in their day-to-day. And if there is any unit that all of us collectively understand and agree on, is the monetary benefit that operations or producers see after adopting this technology. So I'm just going to dive deeper into where the $60 billion number comes from. So we actually looked at weeks of operational data for both seasoned and green operators, and due to our data collection platform, and we record every event, what is happening on the field, we knew exactly what actions were completed and in what sequence for those particular weeks. Now we took that data and we passed that through our optimization model, and our model was able to churn out the perfect day. So we had 2 lists that we could compare. A list that the operator without optimization actually carried, and the list that if he had his hands on this optimization software, what could have been the ideal sequence of tasks to do. So we had a clear comparison of what the gap of prioritization was. So what we were able to do was we were able to calculate the savings that would happen per well per year when we looked at those comparisons. A simple example is we would actually look at some failed inspections, which was due a week before it actually got done. And within that week, there was a malfunction on an equipment. So if the operator had his hands on that list and he would actually follow it, we would have been avoiding that operational expenditure. Or we actually saw that a lot of times the pigs were delayed and that directly impacted the production in the following couple of days. That could also be avoided if the pig was sent at the right time. So these were the kind of events that we actually based off our calculations of. Um, we saw that there were less safety incidents, less delayed pigs affecting production. We saw that issues in production were identified multiple hours before the human would be able to intervene. We also saw reduction in travel time because it's next to impossible to make an operator function as Google Maps and identify the right direction to go to, even in these extreme weather conditions or these back roads. So we estimated these savings that I talked about, the difference between what happened versus what would have happened, uh, to $19,202 per operating well per year. And the data science team in EasyOps actually worked into segregating that savings into three corporate goals that producers have: increased production. We need the operation to be up and running, decreased operational expenditure, and safety and compliance, actually ensuring that they are running a smooth and safe operation. So about 14% of this number, which attributes to 5.9 billion revenue increase, was attributed to increasing the production of the commodity itself. Around 30% was attributed to decreasing operational expenditure, and around 48% was attributed to running a safe and compliant operation, making sure that all the inspections are on time, making sure that all the health and safety forms are completed on time. Just diving slightly, uh, yes, just diving slightly deeper into the financial benefits that came from our different operational optimization products. Around 82% of our benefits actually came from optimizing the day-to-day of operators. And around 13% came from optimizing third-party contractor optimization. This is the example that I previously said, where we need specialized persons like E&I guy or mechanic. And how can we bundle these services to form an optimal package day? Because you cannot call an E&I guy at these remote locations for an hour, and then 2 weeks later you call them again for 2 more hours. You could actually do some analysis and package them well. So around 13% of the savings was actually happening from the third party optimization. And finally, around 5% came from trucking optimization. That is making sure that each of the tanks are taken care of and they are not running low, and they are actually topped up in the most optimal fashion while making sure that our cost spending is optimal. As I mentioned, we are constantly striving to improve our optimization models to incorporate more data. Oil and gas industry is still working around collecting the right data. For example, having up-to-date information on road bans, or even having seamless sensor data following through from all of our wells, or ability to have geospatial coordinates for everyone who is working endlessly on fields. Once we have our hands on all of those special data points, we can actually attain the ideal state of having access to the entirety of data in the oil and gas space. When we are actually ready to get to that space and the oil and gas is completely digitized, what is the savings that one can see when there is perfect optimization? As Jordan mentioned, the tomorrow's challenge. If we are able to solve the tomorrow's challenge, we were able to extrapolate this information, and we saw that there was 21 billion value capture more on top of the value, the 48 billion that we already saw, if we were able to get our hands on the entirety of the data that is there. and completely take the guesswork out. We saw that around 44% of this saving was attributed to increased safety and compliance. Around 36 was attributed to actually decreasing the operational expenditure, and around 4 billion or 20% came from increased production. This is, just to recap, if we are to reach that stage where we have access to entirety of the data in oil and gas space, this is really a dream that me as a data scientist can have in oil and gas space. But yeah, this is the gap that is available for us to only attain in the upcoming years. And I'm really excited to see where we go with this. All right. I guess I've said my bit.
Great. Thanks, Ruchi, for your input there. Effectively, what the organization with EasyOps is doing with oil and gas companies is aligning to the corporate business strategies and priorities. So we adhere to the risk element, ensuring that risk is being moderated, whether it's through regulation and compliance, but facilitating the operational efficiencies. And as Ruchi has pointed out, in terms of the overall business value that we're seeing with the organizations, and through the data algorithms and the data science effectiveness that our teams are putting together, we're able to actually pull through and come up with organizations working with us in terms of the overall cost savings rationale of about 19,000 for operating oil sites. Effectively, what this means is we're getting peak performances out of the worker bees in terms of the oil and gas field operators at the work level, but also that information data is being aggregated and populated up to who matters in the organization, such as your senior VPs, your CEOs, and your CFOs for stakeholder value. So one of the things I wanted to ask any of the attendees up there, and please raise your hand or feel free to take yourselves off mute, is what's driving you to this event today? What are you trying to gain for performance efficiencies? And is any of this information relevant to your work in today's role? Yeah, I mean, we're highlighting from a high level standpoint the three common business value drivers you're going to find in the energy sector, and any sector for that matter, but we primarily deal within the energy sector, is going to be top of priority for business strategy priorities is adhering to risk. What is the risk, right? And our solution basically provides that regulatory compliance element in terms that the business workflows, the operator levels are actually in an operational safety mode in terms of how they go about their days, in terms of getting away from the manual, tedious work that takes them away from their focus and their daily priorities into more of an automated state, and being able to have that communication effective channel up to management for event notifications and things like that. So what we're highlighting is really the industry challenges here. And to me, it's a people issue. It always has been. So being that you've got people out in the field, you typically will see operational safety events happening, right? So we're very much compliant and focus on regulations and that compliance, so that way we can adhere to those safety issues being less occurred in the market on a day-to-day basis. The other component is really the operational efficiencies. How do we get peak performance out of the teams? How do we get them to actually start putting that workflow effectively aligning with the KPI objectives with upper management to ensure that those daily routines that they're adhering to is really cost saving element for the company. Most of the outline performance that we see with the I won't call them the blue collar workers, but the field operators at that level really aren't focused on what the upper management is, except if it's tied to a compensation model or if it's tied to basically better performance. Better performance in teams means less overtime, less work, more compensation, better improvements overall for the organization. And from an organization standpoint, it's really affecting the stakeholder value. It's freeing up cash flow. And that's really what these organizations are looking for. How can I find a better way to free up our cash flow positions so that way we can add stakeholder value? The other thing is ensuring that we're meeting all the compliance regulatory affairs issues and concerns in the market being addressed today. So traditional conventional oil and gas producers, for example, need to adhere to emission standards reliability in terms of basically the new emissions functionality being approached by the political know-hows and know-doers in terms of our government officials, ensuring that basically we're meeting those emissions control standards, right? So that's a change management concept. So our solution allows the organizations to be able to effectively communicate and being able to operate at peak performance with their teams, to be able to actually retrofit, redesign, you name it, in terms of basically, and still being able to operate under their business operations model effectively.
Yeah, and sorry, again, I know I was pretty late, but if you could even just give me a really quick overview of the suite that EasyOps has, and exactly what they do, whether it's consulting or technology, SaaS, or whatever. I'd love to hear about that at a high level. But also, if there are other questions, I know that's a pretty menial one.
We are the leader in terms of optimization for oil and gas field operators and logistics software in a SaaS-based model, or it could be on-prem, depending what the client's needs are. But we work with many of the largest organizations globally and in North American producers. So we have an upstream and midstream model that works effectively together as one solution, where all the data is captured and allows the field operators to be able to work more efficiently in their day-to-day routines, prioritizing their daily tasks, working with management, and being able to provide daily task management, being able to communicate through the solution, automating and optimizing, and allowing us to provide data monetization. So that way we can aggregate what's important data up to the management, and that would be your CFOs, senior VPs of production, operators, operations levels, as in logistics and transportation. So that's it in a bit of a nutshell.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.